How did less than 0.2% of the world's population produce minds that rewrote the rules of science, revolutionized psychology, and shaped the economies and technologies we all depend on today? Behind many of history's greatest breakthroughs stand Jewish thinkers whose ideas outlived dogma, borders, even persecution. Ranking them is not just about their genius, it is about measuring the forces that changed what we know and how we live. Some names will surprise you, but each altered the modern world in ways that still define our lives. So what makes one legacy outshine another? Every thinker in this ranking is measured by the same 5 pillars. Global impact asks how far their ideas traveled. Did their work change lives on every continent or only in a single field? Influence on modern life looks at how their insights shape what we do and how we think today, from the technologies in our pockets to the systems that govern our societies. Breakthrough ideas means we count only those who introduced something truly new, a leap no one else had made, not just a refinement. Historical significance weighs how their work changed the course of events or opened new paths for others. Legacy considers what endures. Are their names attached to institutions, movements, or discoveries that remain central long after their time? Each pillar helps us see not just what a thinker achieved, but why it still matters. Proof for every ranking comes from the historical record, original writings, archival footage, and expert analysis. This is the proof at the heart of our list. Sources range from published books and scientific papers to official records and period journalism, each cited clearly throughout. Expect to see direct quotations, manuscript scans, and on-screen references to reinforce every claim. The thinkers included here come from philosophy, science, psychology, economics, medicine, law, technology, and the arts. Their backgrounds and beliefs vary widely, but what unites them is the measurable effect of their ideas, not their ancestry or genetics. This is the measurable impact we evaluate. Each field is judged on its own terms, with achievements weighed by their influence on our world today. This approach ensures that every spot in the ranking is earned by evidence, not reputation or myth. Baruch Spinoza's name disappeared from the records of Amsterdam's Portuguese Jewish community in July 1656. The official notice of herem was read aloud in the synagogue, cutting him off from family, friends, and the world he had known since birth. At just 24, Spinoza lost every tie to his community, not for a crime, but for his ideas. He questioned the immortality of the soul, denied divine reward and punishment, and refused to accept God as a being outside nature. The ban was not just symbolic. He was forbidden contact, denied financial support, and erased from communal life. Freed from communal pressure, Spinoza began writing the book that would make him infamous, Ethics. In its pages, he described a universe run not by miracles, but by natural law. God and nature, he wrote, are one and the same. Reason, not revelation, leads to truth. Spinoza's vision of a world governed by necessity, where all things are part of a single substance, laid the foundation for secular rationalism. His ideas reached far beyond Amsterdam, shaping the Enlightenment and giving later generations a model for thinking outside religious boundaries. Spinoza's exile became the price and the proof of intellectual freedom. Norbert Wiener entered the world of mathematics as a prodigy, earning his doctorate from Harvard at just 18. But it was during the chaos of World War II that his thinking took a new direction. At MIT, Wiener worked on radar systems, grappling with a problem that reached far beyond the battlefield. How could machines predict and control the future behavior of fast-moving targets? His solution drew on mathematics, engineering, and biology, and it led to a radical new vision. In 1948, Wiener published Cybernetics, or control and communication in the animal and the machine. The book outlined a framework where feedback, the constant loop of information between a system and its environment, became the key to understanding everything from thermostats to human brains. Cybernetics bridged the worlds of living organisms and machines, showing that both could adapt, learn, and self-correct. Wiener's ideas shaped early computing, robotics, and artificial intelligence, and the Macy conferences he helped organize brought together pioneers across disciplines to explore these new frontiers. The language of feedback loops and self-regulating systems now underpins modern technology, from smart devices to neural networks. Wiener's leap from pure mathematics to the architecture of control systems changed how scientists and engineers approach complexity itself. Moses Mendelssohn arrived in Berlin as a young man with little more than his books and a relentless curiosity. By the mid-1700s, he had become a central figure in the Haskalah, or Jewish Enlightenment, a movement that insisted Jewish tradition could thrive alongside the new world of reason and science. Mendelssohn's most influential work, Jerusalem, published in 1783, argued that Judaism is not defined by rigid dogma, but by the lived practice of its laws. For Mendelssohn, belief was secondary. What mattered was action, ritual, ethics, community. This idea set him apart from both Christian theologians and secular philosophers of his time. To make Jewish learning accessible in the modern age, Mendelssohn led the project to translate the Torah into German, producing the Bür, a version with Hebrew commentary and German text in Hebrew letters. This translation opened Jewish scripture to thousands who spoke German but could not read traditional texts, bridging the gap between the synagogue and the wider world. Mendelssohn's legacy is the blueprint for modern Jewish identity, rooted in tradition, open to reason, and able to engage with the world without losing itself. Karl Marx was born in 1818 in Trier in the German Rhineland to a family that had recently converted from Judaism to Protestantism. His father made the change less out of conviction than necessity, as Jews faced strict legal and professional barriers. Yet Marx's ancestry would remain a point of controversy, both in his own lifetime and in the generations that followed. In his early 20s, Marx wrote an essay called On the Jewish Question, published in 1844. The piece has sparked fierce debate ever since. Some read it as a critique of religious identity in modern society. Others see troubling echoes of the era's prejudices. What is clear is that Marx was wrestling with the complexities of belonging, exclusion, and the promises of universal emancipation. Marx's real breakthrough came in his analysis of society's foundations. He argued that material conditions, the way people produce and exchange goods, shape every other part of life, from law and politics to art and belief. This approach, known as historical materialism, stood in stark contrast to the idea that history is driven by great individuals or abstract ideals. For Marx, the engine of history was the struggle between classes rooted in the economic structure of society. His research in the British Library filled thousands of pages, culminating in Capital, where he dissected how wealth is created and who benefits from it. Marx's theories provided a new lens for understanding power, inequality, and the possibility of social change. Whether embraced or rejected, his ideas have become inescapable in debates over economics and justice, influencing movements and governments across the globe. Jonas Salk entered the public eye at a time when polio was one of the most feared diseases in the world. Each summer, parents dreaded news of new outbreaks as thousands of children were left paralyzed or killed by the virus. In 1954, Salk and his team at the University of Pittsburgh launched the largest medical experiment ever conducted up to that point, a field trial for a new inactivated polio vaccine. Over 1.8 million children known as polio pioneers took part in the trials. On April 12, 1955, the results were announced. Salk's vaccine was safe, effective, and ready for mass distribution. Within a few short years, polio cases in the United States dropped from nearly 60,000 annually to just a few hundred. The impact rippled worldwide as nations adopted the vaccine, and the disease that once haunted entire generations began to vanish. Salk's approach relied on inactivated or killed virus, which made the vaccine safer for mass use. But Salk's influence went beyond the science. When asked who owned the patent for the vaccine, he famously replied, "The people, I would say. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun?" By refusing to profit from his discovery, Salk set a new ethical standard for public health. His choice allowed manufacturers around the world to produce the vaccine without restriction, accelerating the global campaign against polio and saving millions of lives. In 1952, a young scientist at King's College London captured an image that would become one of the most important photographs in the history of science. Rosalind Franklin, trained in physical chemistry and X-ray crystallography, produced what she labeled Photo 51. This image, a blurry symmetrical X, held the key to the structure of DNA. Franklin's meticulous experimental notebooks from King's College show her methodical approach, preparing hydrated DNA fibers, calibrating the X-ray equipment, and recording every variable. The clarity of Photo 51 was no accident. It was the result of hours of careful preparation and technical innovation, isolating the B form of DNA and using humid conditions to capture its true structure. Franklin analyzed the diffraction patterns with mathematical precision, calculating the dimensions of the helix and its repeating units. Her data pointed to a double helix with bases stacked like rungs on a twisted ladder. Yet, in the competitive atmosphere of early 1950s molecular biology, Franklin's findings circulated without her full consent. The photograph was shown to James Watson and Francis Crick, who used it to build their now famous model of DNA. When the Nobel Prize was awarded in 1962, Franklin's name was missing. She died of cancer in 1958, and the prize is not given posthumously. Franklin's contribution was not just technical, it was foundational. Her work provided the empirical proof needed to confirm the double helix, launching the era of molecular genetics. Today, her notebooks and Photo 51 are preserved as evidence of a mind that saw what others missed, and of a scientist whose recognition came too late. In the opening year of the 20th century, a book appeared in Vienna that would change how people thought about the mind. Sigmund Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams, first published in 1900, introduced a radical idea. Much of what shapes our thoughts and actions lies outside conscious awareness, the unconscious. Freud, trained as a neurologist, argued that dreams reveal hidden wishes and conflicts, and that talking about them could bring relief from psychological distress. This was the birth of psychoanalysis, a new way of exploring the mind through dialogue, not just observation or measurement. Freud's methods and theories quickly spread beyond medicine. The language of the unconscious, repression, and defense mechanisms entered literature, art, and everyday speech. Terms such as Freudian slip and ego became part of the cultural lexicon. His ideas influenced writers from Virginia Woolf to Franz Kafka, filmmakers, and even political theorists. Psychoanalysis offered a new lens for understanding not just illness, but creativity, society, and even civilization itself. Yet from the start, Freud's work was controversial. Many of his specific claims, especially about sexuality and development, have not stood up to scientific testing. Critics argue that psychoanalysis relies more on interpretation than on evidence, and that many of its core concepts are too vague to be proven or disproven. Still, the practice of talk therapy, the focus on unconscious motives, and the belief that self-knowledge can heal remain central in mental health today. Freud's legacy is not just in the clinic, but in the way modern culture thinks about the mind and its mysteries. John von Neumann's fingerprints are all over the digital world. In 1945, as the Second World War ended, he drafted a technical document at the Moore School of Electrical Engineering that quietly became the blueprint for modern computing. The first draft of a report on the IDVAC introduced a simple but transformative idea. A computer should store both data and instructions in the same memory, ready to be accessed and modified at lightning speed. This stored program concept, now called the von Neumann architecture, is the silent engine behind nearly every computer, phone, and server in use today. The design allowed machines to be reprogrammed with ease, turning them from single-purpose calculators into flexible, creative tools. Von Neumann's reach did not stop at hardware. With Oscar Morgenstern, he published Theory of Games and Economic Behavior in 1944, founding the field of game theory. The minimax theorem, his signature result, gave mathematicians and strategists a way to find the best move in any zero-sum contest, from poker tables to nuclear standoffs. Game theory now shapes economics, political science, evolutionary biology, and even psychology, offering a language for competition and cooperation alike. By the time of his death in 1957, von Neumann had helped design atomic bombs, explored quantum mechanics, and set the stage for artificial intelligence. But it is the architecture he sketched in 1945 that quietly powers the digital age. Every time a device boots up, it is following a path von Neumann mapped out, making him not just a mathematician, but the architect of how information moves and decisions are made in the modern world. In the early 1970s, Daniel Kahneman began asking a simple but unsettling question. Do people really make decisions by weighing all the facts, or do their minds take shortcuts? Working with Amos Tversky, Kahneman set up experiments that asked volunteers to judge probabilities, estimate risks, or make choices under uncertainty. Again and again, the results pointed in the same direction. People relied on mental shortcuts, what Kahneman called heuristics, like judging by resemblance, by recent memory, or by an initial number that stuck in their heads. These shortcuts helped in daily life, but they also led to predictable mistakes, cognitive biases. The famous 1974 science paper, Judgment Under Uncertainty. Heuristics and biases mapped out these systematic errors. Kahneman's work challenged the heart of economic theory. The rational actor model, the idea that people always act in their own best interest after careful calculation, no longer fit the evidence. Instead, human judgment was shaped by emotion, by context, and by framing. Losses hurt more than gains feel good. The way a question is posed can change a person's answer, even when the facts are identical. These discoveries launched behavioral economics, a field that now shapes policies, business strategies, and public health campaigns. In 2002, Kahneman received the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences for showing that psychology, not just math, drives economic decisions. His 2011 book, Thinking Fast and Slow, introduced millions to the idea that our minds run on two tracks, one quick and intuitive, the other slow and deliberate. Today, governments and companies use these insights to design better choices, from retirement plans to organ donation forms. Kahneman's legacy is a new understanding of why we decide as we do, and how knowing our own blind spots can help us do better. Albert Einstein's ideas. Travel farther than the speed of light, straight into the heart of modern life. In 1905, while working as a patent clerk in Bern, he published a series of papers that rewrote the rules of the universe. One of them introduced special relativity, showing that time and space are not absolute. Instead, they bend and stretch depending on how fast you move. The famous equation E equals mc squared revealed that a tiny amount of mass can unleash an enormous amount of energy. 10 years later, Einstein completed the general theory of relativity, describing gravity not as a force, but as the warping of space-time itself. Massive objects curve the fabric of reality. Everything, planets, light, even time, follows those curves. For most people, relativity sounds like cosmic poetry or high school math homework, but its consequences are woven into the world we navigate every day. Every time a phone gives directions, it relies on a network of satellites circling the Earth. Each GPS satellite carries an atomic clock, ticking with astonishing precision. But here is the twist. Time moves differently for those clocks than it does on the ground. Special relativity means the satellite's high speed makes their clocks run a little slow. General relativity means the weaker gravity up there makes their clocks run a little fast. The total difference adds up to about 38 microseconds per day. It sounds tiny, but if left uncorrected, the GPS system would drift by about 7 kilometers every day. Without Einstein's equations, finding your way home, or anywhere else, would be impossible. The reach of relativity does not end with navigation. Particle accelerators, which probe the deepest secrets of matter, depend on relativistic corrections to smash atoms at near-light speeds. Nuclear power plants and medical imaging owe their existence to the understanding that mass and energy are two sides of the same coin. Even our picture of the universe, expanding, filled with black holes and gravitational waves, rests on the geometry Einstein described. Einstein's influence is not just technical. His vision of a universe governed by elegant universal laws inspired generations of scientists and thinkers. He became a symbol of intellectual curiosity and the courage to question the obvious. His name is now shorthand for genius, but his greatest gift was making the invisible rules of reality visible and showing that even the most abstract ideas can shape the world we touch. Billions of people every day depend on the insight that time and space are not fixed, but alive with possibility. That is the modern footprint of relativity, and why Einstein stands at the very top of this ranking. Across every field of modern life, Jewish thinkers have left their fingerprints, often in places where few expect them. Hannah Arendt was born in Germany in 1906. She escaped Nazi persecution and went on to redefine political philosophy. Her book, The Origins of Totalitarianism, became the definitive study of how regimes like Hitler's and Stalin's used terror and ideology to crush individual freedom. Arendt's phrase, "the banality of evil," still shapes how the world understands complicity and moral responsibility. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the daughter of Jewish immigrants in Brooklyn. She rose from law school outsider to Supreme Court justice. In the 1970s, she argued and won landmark cases that forced American law to treat men and women as equals. On the bench, Ginsburg's opinions and dissents set new standards for gender equality, civil rights, and the rights of the marginalized. Her legal mind and quiet tenacity made her an icon far beyond the courtroom. Equality became a central theme of her legacy. Sergey Brin's journey began in Moscow, where his family faced anti-Semitism and barriers to opportunity. After emigrating to the United States, Brin co-founded Google in 1998. The company's search engine transformed how billions find information, making knowledge accessible in every language and corner of the globe. Brin's work on algorithms and artificial intelligence continues to shape the digital landscape, touching everything from medicine to self-driving cars. Google changed how we find the world. Leonard Bernstein brought the energy of New York and the soul of Jewish musical tradition to the world's grandest stages. As conductor of the New York Philharmonic and composer of West Side Story, Bernstein broke down the walls between classical and popular music. His televised young people's concerts brought symphonies into living rooms across America, inspiring a new generation to see music as a universal language. Bob Dylan, born Robert Zimmerman in Duluth, Minnesota, took the folk traditions of his Jewish upbringing and spun them into poetry that changed the sound of the 20th century. With songs like Blowin' in the Wind and Like a Rolling Stone, Dylan gave voice to civil rights, protest, and personal transformation. In 2016, he became the first songwriter to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, proof that lyrics can be as powerful as any novel or speech. Paul Ehrlich, working in Germany at the turn of the last century, pioneered the field of immunology. He developed the first effective treatment for syphilis, a breakthrough that saved millions and sparked the modern era of chemotherapy. Ehrlich's research on antibodies laid the groundwork for vaccines and the fight against infectious disease, a legacy that continues in every immunization today. Emma Lazarus, the poet whose words are inscribed at the base of the Statue of Liberty, gave America its most enduring promise. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Her writing, shaped by her Sephardic Jewish heritage and her activism for refugees, turned the statue from a symbol of power into a beacon of welcome and hope. These are only a handful among many. Each brought something new, a word, a melody, a law, a cure, a technology that changed the world for millions. Their stories reveal a spectrum of achievement, from the laboratory to the Supreme Court, from the concert hall to the silicon chip. The breadth of their impact stretches far beyond the boundaries of any single ranking, showing how Jewish creativity and resilience have shaped the very fabric of modern life. Jewish intellectual achievement is rooted in a set of cultural and institutional practices that stretch back centuries, shaping how knowledge is valued, transmitted, and debated. At the heart of this tradition lies the study of the Talmud, a vast and intricate record of legal, ethical, and philosophical argument. In yeshivas, Jewish academies of learning, students have long gathered in pairs or small groups, challenging each other's interpretations, questioning assumptions, and tracing every argument to its logical end. This style of study does not reward passive memorization. Instead, it thrives on sharp disagreement, relentless questioning, and the idea that truth is approached through dialogue rather than decree. The skills honed in these study halls, textual analysis, logical reasoning, and comfort with ambiguity, carry over into every field where Jewish thinkers later made their mark. Literacy has always been a cornerstone of Jewish communal life. Even in medieval Europe, when most of the surrounding population could not read, Jewish boys, and in some communities, girls, were taught to read Hebrew from a young age. The religious imperative to study sacred texts made literacy a social expectation, not a privilege. By the late 15th century, Jewish printers were producing Hebrew books across Italy, Spain, and the Ottoman Empire. The first Hebrew book was printed in 1475, just decades after Gutenberg's press. These printing networks allowed ideas to move quickly between far-flung communities, creating a shared intellectual world that spanned continents even before the rise of modern communication. Diaspora life added another layer. Forced migration and exclusion from mainstream institutions meant that Jewish communities developed their own systems for preserving and sharing knowledge. Scholars expelled from one city could find refuge in another, carrying with them new interpretations and methods. Letters, manuscripts, and later printed books traveled along trade and family networks stretching from North Africa to Eastern Europe. These connections made it possible for a breakthrough in one community to ripple across the Jewish world, and eventually into the wider intellectual currents of Europe and America. Communal support for learning was not just symbolic. Many towns maintained funds to support poor students and scholars, viewing study as a communal investment. The ideal of the scholar was woven into family life, with knowledge passed down through generations, often from parent to child or grandparent to grandchild. In times of crisis, such as expulsions or waves of anti-Semitism, families preserved books and memories, ensuring that traditions of debate and inquiry would survive even when physical communities did not. Outsider status shaped perspective as well. Jewish thinkers, often excluded from the centers of power, learned to question the assumptions of the majority culture. This distance sometimes allowed for a clearer view of prevailing norms and a willingness to challenge ideas that others took for granted. The experience of being an outsider also fostered resilience and a drive to prove oneself through intellectual achievement. Taken together, these factors, debate culture, high literacy, strong networks, and the perspective of the outsider created a fertile ground for innovation. The Jewish intellectual tradition is not the product of innate ability, but of a sustained commitment to learning and argument, and the belief that knowledge is a communal treasure to be shared, challenged, and preserved. Behind each ranking stands a network of scholars, archivists, and institutions whose work grounds every claim in evidence. Stephen Nadler, professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, is a leading authority on Baruch Spinoza. His biography, Spinoza: A Life, draws on rare manuscripts and the original excommunication records preserved in Amsterdam Portuguese Jewish Community Archives. For Moses Mendelssohn and the Jewish Enlightenment, Jonathan Sarna of Brandeis University provides essential context, with access to Mendelssohn's correspondence and early editions of Jerusalem held at the Jewish Museum Berlin. Peter Gallison at Harvard is the go-to scholar for Einstein's intellectual world, tracing how the 1905 papers traveled from Bern to Princeton. The Einstein Archives at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, with more than 40,000 documents, offer letters, photographs, and notebooks for direct citation. E. Einstein remains central to that story. George Dyson, historian of computing, has explored the legacy of John von Neumann, with primary materials housed at the Institute for Advanced Study and the Library of Congress. Dyson's research connects the technical blueprints of early computing with the personal stories behind them. Legacy is the thread he follows. Brenda Maddox's biography of Rosalind Franklin, the Dark Lady of DNA, draws from Franklin's laboratory notebooks, correspondence, and Photo 51, now safeguarded at King's College London. Photo 51 continues to shape the history of DNA. For Jonas Salk, Paul Offit's Vaccinated uses records from the Salk Institute and the March of Dimes, including field trial data and personal letters. Salk's work changed public health. Sigmund Freud's legacy is documented through the Freud Museum in London, which holds his original couch, analytic notes, and patient case files. Freud's material archive anchors decades of interpretation. For the story of behavioral economics, Daniel Kahneman's archives at Princeton and his Nobel Prize lecture provide a direct line to the development of heuristics and biases research. Behavioral economics draws on those primary sources. Every section of this documentary is linked to a roster of recognized experts, each chosen for their command of archival sources and their record of peer-reviewed scholarship. Where possible, direct interviews and commentary from these historians and scientists add another layer of credibility. The archives themselves, Einstein's papers, Spinoza's letters, and Franklin's X-ray photographs, are not just footnotes, but living sources. They are cited on screen and in the video description, making it possible for viewers to trace claims back to their origins. Archives matter. For those seeking deeper dives, a full bibliography and list of archival repositories will be provided, including contact information for major collections, the Einstein Archives in Jerusalem, the Freud Museum in London, the MIT Museum for Norbert Wiener, and the Salk Institute Archives in La Jolla. By mapping out the sources, the experts, and the archives, this documentary invites viewers to see not only the thinkers themselves, but also the scholarly community that preserves, interprets, and debates their legacies. Today, the insights of Jewish thinkers drive global innovation in labs, classrooms, and boardrooms, from quantum physics to behavioral economics. Their ideas are not just history, they are blueprints for tomorrow's breakthroughs. As societies wrestle with uncertainty and rapid change, the power of critical inquiry and relentless curiosity matters more than ever. The legacy of these minds reminds us, questioning the world is the first step toward changing it. Share your thoughts below and join the conversation.